Is wide receiver Malik Washington the potential slot answer for the Dolphins in 2024? We're diving into his game, where he wins, and where he's come from here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, the author of Touchdown Miami. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast here on the Locked On Network, because we don't just say it, we live it. It is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase on last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Malik Washington, the next day 3 deep dive here that we have this week on Locked On Dolphins. I'm continuing to kind of look at the undrafted free agent class, make sure I have that crop of players fully scouted to present my notes and kind of who I think has best opportunities to make the 53-man roster in the fall. But we're taking advantage of a robust and very promising day 3 crop of picks for the Dolphins this week to give these guys each their time in the sun, their time of spotlight and acknowledgement of what they do well, where my questions are for them as players, and how they could potentially impact this Dolphins team as early as 2024. The past 2 days, we've done running back Jaylen Wright out of Tennessee, and Muhammad Kamara, the pass rusher out of Colorado State, was yesterday's subject. Now at pick 184, 185 technically, there's a forfeited pick in there somewhere from some team earlier in the draft, the Dolphins get Malik Washington out of Virginia. And his path, I think, is one of the most interesting things about Malik Washington as a player. If you were to pick some of the best academic institutions that play FBS football, you'd probably very quickly come to the names of Northwestern and Virginia, which is the two places that Malik Washington has played his career in football. He started at Northwestern. He graduated from Northwestern, transfers to Virginia, gets his master's degree or master's certificate, one or the other. I forget. He was on with Steve Smith with Underdog Fantasy. Did a really good interview talking about his game before the draft and talked about being at those stops along the way. And the transition from Northwestern to Virginia really unlocked some new levels of Malik Washington's game, where Virginia moved him around a fair bit. They didn't play him out wide as frequently as they did at Northwestern. Say Northwestern in 2022, about 2/3 of Malik Washington's reps came in the slot. The other third came on the perimeter. Virginia put him in the backfield for a couple of packages. They put him in line or as an H-back player in the red zone, try to get some split flow and get him out into the flats. They put him in the slot a ton. They did play him out wide. He played on kick returns. So there's a lot of ways that this 5'8.5", 195-pound wide receiver who runs in the 4.4s, which is it's a good time. Don't thumb your nose at it just because you're used to these Dolphins receivers that can absolutely fly. Kind of gave him a chance to showcase himself in a lot of different ways as more of a facilitate touches for him kind of player. And we said this on day 3 when they drafted Malik Washington on Saturday night. 35 missed tackles this past season. That's a monstrous number, right? And that's really where he shines. Now, he didn't necessarily win down the field. 8.1 average depth of target yards, 8.1 yards this past year at Virginia. But because he could create with the ball in his hands, and because he was good after, he averaged over 6 yards, almost 6.5 yards after catch per reception. This is where the productivity really shined for Malik at Virginia this past season. So I think this is a player who has a unique opportunity as a late round pick because he was pigeonholed to some degree because of his size to maybe come in and carve out a pretty reasonable role within the Dolphins offense. This Dolphins offense, from a passing game perspective, you saw what it has done to veteran receivers like Chase Claypool, who came in at the trade deadline and could not get any traction going whatsoever the entire season because of the complexity of how they adjust their routes based on coverage. You saw what it did to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill came in first year and says, really, I didn't fully grasp and understand how the offense was supposed to work in year one because of the nuances of it. And now I understand that a little bit more. And I think he would have had a legitimate case had he not got hurt for 2,000 receiving yards this past season. There's a reason why a guy like River Craycraft has followed to this scheme with success. And it's not because he has like all-world physical attributes, but it's because he's a smart, intelligent player who understands the scheme and is not afraid of dirty work. And if you ask me to kind of peg where I think Malik Washington can fit for the Dolphins, he graduated from Northwestern and he got a degree from Virginia. Like, super intelligent player to have played at those institutions. And you can tell when you hear him talk, he's extremely well-spoken, very insightful. And I think this is somebody who I would give a puncher's chance to come in and maybe find the right role. And I think it was interesting when Mike McDaniel talked to him on the phone, they released the phone call or snippets of the phone call. Mike McDaniel was very candid and said, you are going to have a opportunity if you come here and do the right things and prepare the right way and be a professional, be a pro, to have production for us this year. And I'm inclined to agree. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I am inclined to agree that he will have the opportunity to do all that. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the scheme fit, where he wins, how it complements what the Dolphins already have. That's up next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. So make sure you stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience. So not just the winning formula for championships, but it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. Going to the game is supposed to be fun, so make sure it stays that way. Get the tickets without the stress. Gametime. It's an authorized ticket marketplace for the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets, maybe not in South Florida, but playoff tickets nonetheless, even faster and easier than before. Prices on the Gametime actually go down closer you get to tip off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices used from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% on your tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. You can get the view from your seat with the panoramic view, and there's no surprise fees. You can get all-in pricing up front, so when you put the tickets into your cart, you know exactly what you are going to pay. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. With Gametime, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets for the lowest prices. Guaranteed. So Malik Washington as a football player, I think the thing that impressed me the most was the ball skills. When you think about a player who is 5'9", so there's a modesty to his frame that exists, and that expands beyond just his height. He's 5'8.5", which is third percentile for wide receivers since 2000 at the NFL Combine. His wingspan is just short of 73 inches, which is 14th percentile for wide receivers at the NFL Combine since the year 2000. And his arm length is 30 3/8 inches. That's 12th percentile. So you're bottom 15% in height, wingspan, and arm length. So you don't necessarily have the largest catch radius where you can just put it in his area and he will catch the football. But if you put it anywhere on his frame, he's really good with his hands. His body adjustments, his concentration, how soft his hands are, all of those things really stood out to me in a way that was pleasantly surprising. Most guys that are that stature, they have small hands. He's over 9 inches with his hands. And I know everybody jokes about hand size in the pre-draft process, but it does carry some merit. And I think you see it with Malik Washington, his ability to pluck the ball away from his frame, whether it is vertical down the field, looking back for the football, whether it is throws low on the shoelaces along the sideline. He had one awesome play at Northwestern from 2022 that was a shoestring sideline catch that was really good body control, sideline awareness, hands, whether he's going down low to dig it out, or whether he's got to extend back to the football to make sure that he beats a defender to the ball at the catch point. All of those areas, he popped. And for all of the good that Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle bring, I know one point of frustration for a lot of Dolphins fans is some of the drops in big play opportunities. They make a ton of big explosive plays. They're elite wide receivers. But the drops stand out in everybody's minds because they come in these big moments where you potentially could have had game-swinging plays. I'm not saying Malik Washington is the cure-all to that, but he was credited with 3 drops last season altogether, and he was targeted, 138 times? That's a drop rate of like 2.6%. Insanely good hands. And I think that's a welcomed addition when you consider even in tight contested areas. He won 65% of his contested catch targets. That was a huge point of issue for Braxton Berrios and Cedric Wilson as the 2 other wide receivers that took meaningful snaps for you last year. The most meaningful snaps, I should say. Those guys did not thrive in those situations. So you've got strong hands with a good contested catch rate and concentration area, with the ability to force missed tackles. The layers, you start to compound them and stack them on top of each other. You could say, okay, I could totally see where this is a dude who might have some in-ways to meaningful opportunities. 19 reps on the bench press. Now, shorter arms, less distance for the bar to travel. I'm not going to get into the kinesiology of the bench press, but that's 83rd percentile for wide receivers. Broad jump or vertical jump was 42.5 inches. So there's just explosiveness. There's functional strength here. You watch him break tackles and it stands out. So I think there's a lot to like for Malik. I think the big question that I have for Malik and maybe the growth area that exists is the play on the outside, because he was a predominant slot player at Northwestern, and his volume of snaps that were in the slot in Virginia only went further up. Him playing against press coverage, I didn't get a chance to see a lot of it on film. So he's got great guys to work with Tyreek and Jaylen to kind of develop that, plus his wide receiver coach is Wes Welker. But even if he's only ever a slot player, I think there is a level of winning one-on-ones that this has the potential to be an upgrade opportunity for, but you got to grasp all the nuances of this offense for that to manifest itself and for that to come true. So I think that's kind of where I'm ready to buy in, and I see all the reason to believe that Malik Washington maybe fell because it was a good wide receiver class and people had questions of how much of his production was just juiced from Virginia, and they viewed him as a slot-only player who didn't have the same elite speed as Anthony Gould, as an example, from Oregon State, who was 5'8", 175, but ran a 4.39 versus a 4.47 for Malik Washington. And where did Anthony Gould get drafted? I think he went before Malik, didn't he? He was drafted. Yeah, he was drafted 142. So he went about almost 50 picks before Malik. Is it because he ran a 4.39? Malik Washington was a more productive player. by far. I think Malik Washington's Northwestern production compared to what Anthony Gould was this past year, but because he ran faster, he just gets drafted earlier, and there's some special teams upside with Gould that maybe you could get, but you don't know you're getting the same ceiling on special teams as you would with Anthony Gould. So if you had me stack those two guys up, I had a third-round valuation on Malik Washington. The challenge being, well, slot receiver, there's a replaceability with player that plays inside only. How do you value that? I don't care. He's here, right? And as we've gone over, there's a lot of overlap with things that the Dolphins identify. So I'm excited about that. We will talk a little bit more about what the barriers to success could be for Malik Washington, particularly in year one as a member of the Miami Dolphins. That is coming your way next. So be sure to stick with us. Pause. We're going to talk more about Monopoly Go. I can already hear what you're saying. Flag on the play, Kyle. You talked about Monopoly Go all week. But there's so much good stuff in this game that I want to make sure you guys know what you're missing if you have not downloaded Monopoly Go. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much stuff to get, like unique stickers where you can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly evolving and challenging tournaments and challenges. There's a ton of unique mini games as well. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or red frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. We mentioned the complexity of this offense, and I do think that's a fair place to start as far as a rookie, any rookie coming in to this offense. Man, it's got to click for you fast, because this is a timing-based spot throw offense with route adjustments based on leverages, based on coverages. And if you don't click with the quarterback, it's going to be really hard to become a volume player. And that's not to say Malik Washington, he was drafted 184th, right? Like, realistically, how much of a volume player can you be in an offense that's going to run the ball at a higher than average rate in the NFL and has Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle to feed the football to? Like, I don't expect you to be a volume player. But it's almost more important to be the big spot, low opportunity target, because a lot of teams just can't play with Waddle and Hill. They can't play with them. So the teams that can, or the teams that structurally fit their defense in a way to eliminate those players, the peripheral answers are one of the weak points of the roster, or were one of the weak points of the roster last year. I think that Malik Washington, if he can get in early and he can get the reps early and he can establish the chemistry with his quarterback early, and if he can grasp, and he talked with Steve Smith about playing in the nickel or playing in the slot, seeing how that kind of interior trio of defenders that you're reading potentially that apex defender, you're reading the safety, you might be reading the outside corner. You have to triangulate those players and how all those pieces of the puzzle fit together for coverage rotation and understand what that means. But you see him often identify space and work to space based on where zone drops happen. And in man coverage, I think he's quick enough and shifty enough. The challenge is, if they press you, how much can you win? Because I think there were some instances on tape more frequently against Northwestern where if they got hands on at the top of the route, being able to play through that contact and create separation, reestablish separation, get back up into an open stride again, was not overly prominent on film. A lot of the successes came with free releases and free accesses. Now, with this Dolphins offense and the motion that it implements, if you can get that on your menu too, and you could start to really process where you start the lineup based on the formational call and all the lingo and the vocabulary and where you're going and how you're supposed to carry your motions They can facilitate free releases for you in that way. But that all comes back to understanding this offense. I think Malik Washington should feel really good about his opportunities to make the football team. I think there's some bottom of the wide receiver room competition that's going to be really fun to watch play out in training camp, because I guarantee you that the guys that don't make the team and get cut from the 53, they'd probably be claimed somewhere else this year. I think there's enough talent in that room that you're not going to carry 8 wide receivers. You're not with the running backs you're going to carry and the tight ends you're potentially carrying and special teams elements. You're going to have a numbers game on your hand that's very unenviable to solve. So I think Malik Washington should feel great about his opportunities within that competition to carve out a role, but the offensive role is to be determined. I think long-term, this could be a really good steal for Miami. I'm not going to sit here and say he answers all your problems in year one. I would not be surprised if the Dolphins go out and they sign another veteran wide receiver to come in and contribute to this team. Whether that's an inside guy or an outside guy like Odell Beckham. Because if it's Odell, I mean, that's all that's off as far as moving around Tyreek and Jaylen. As of right now, kind of your inside guys or your outside guys are probably Tyreek and Jaylen right now. And then if you want to play them on the same side, or if you want to go heavy personnel with 12, you can get them inside and move them around that way. So we shall see what is yet to come for Malik Washington and the Dolphins offense. I'm excited to see his career unfold because I was very high on him as a player. I think there's a lot of promise here. I would not bet against him. I think this is a potential to be a sneaky fan favorite type of player who makes some big plays for Miami. And the Dolphins would be much better off if that's the case. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I will be back again tomorrow. We have 2 more Day 3 rookies to uncover and go over in deep discussion here on Locked On Dolphins this week. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Hope to see you then. Fins up.